Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Gary Perkins. He is the CISO over at CISO Global. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks so much, Pete. So happy to have to be here on my favorite topic in the world.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here as well. Could you give our audience a little background on yourself and your career?
Absolutely. As you said, I am the CISO at CISO Global. I've had the pleasure of being in that role for 2 years now. Prior to that, I spent almost 10 years as the Chief Information Security Officer for the BC government in Canada. So if you pick up an accent, that's why.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the background. Usually we kick off the show with, do you think the talent gap is real? Are the numbers out there correct? Would you say
Let's do it. Let's talk about that, man, because I've come full circle. I'll be honest. So this is it. Candid me right now. I was there when ISACA was saying that it's a 2 million gap in 2017. And as we know, that number ballooned, and you see regularly out there by some pretty credible folks like the World Economic Forum saying there's a 4 million gap. And then I was seeing professionals or people that were looking to get jobs saying, well, that's not real because I can't get a job. And I was suggesting to them that perhaps maybe there's other reasons that would explain that, like they have a terrible resume. But as time went on, and as the layoffs affected more than just non-cyber folks, and we're definitely seeing that where they're affecting cyber folks now, I started to question it. Now, that doesn't mean I won't regularly quote it, because I'll do anything to get people interested and jazzed about a career in cybersecurity, but I don't want to give them false hope either. It's very obvious that this is a big field and we want to get more and more people into it. But are there really 4 million jobs? And I went on a bit of a fact-finding mission to go and check through the different literature. And it does seem to indicate that the 4 million number is more an indication of how many professionals there should be, not the number of current openings. Although if you read through at least one of the studies, so World Economic Forum goes back to ISC squared, tiny bit self-serving, but look, I've got one bias in this world, and it's around cybersecurity. I think it's an awesome area. I want to get everybody inspired to get into it. It said that in North America, that number would be around 522,000. So you have to decide, is that the number of postings that organizations are actively recruiting for? Or is that the desire for more people into this field, or how many people there should be in order to service the needs, the demand?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think there's certainly a big difference between the number of open funded positions and the number of positions that security leaders would like to fill. I hear constantly from CISOs and security leaders of all shapes and sizes that they'd like to hire more people, that there's a lot more work to be done, but they just don't have the budget or the headcount approved right now.
And I did see something else happen before as well. No kidding. I had knowledge of this where previously employers had posted positions and not got qualified applicants. And so there was this learned helplessness where they weren't even posting the openings because they knew that they weren't going to get somebody who was qualified. Perhaps it's because they're not able to compete with some of the other folks that are paying top dollar. So I think there's a number of different factors going on here, which is why I appreciate your focus on kind of getting to the root to this, and really in an effort to help people find their way into cybersecurity, because regardless of the stats, we need you. We need security professionals from all walks of life, all different perspectives, and God knows we need more women getting into cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of expectation gaps too that we've talked about in previous episodes. You had kind of mentioned that when it comes to salary, what the positions may be offering salary-wise may not be what the candidates, the job seekers, are looking for. And so even if there is a one-to-one match between the number of job seekers and the number of jobs, if there's a mismatch in salary or qualifications, there's always going to be some sort of blocker there, whether it's experience or salary.
Okay, let's talk about that a bit then. You got me excited. So can you earn a 6-digit salary in cybersecurity? Hell yes, absolutely. Is that going to be your salary as your first job out of university with no experience? Possibly not, right? You've got to warm yourself up for a 60 to 100 grand, depending on who, where you're working, what experience you have. Do you need a degree to get a job in cybersecurity? No, you do not. Is it easier? I'm going to argue, yes, it would be easier if you have the degree. Should you get a cert? Well, it's all part of what your overall package is. Certainly, I have my 5-step program that I recommend for getting into cybersecurity, and we can talk about that. But in terms of the salaries, if there are educational professionals or counselors, career counselors that are advising people to get into cybersecurity, and they're kind of drawing them in, attracting them with the high salaries, they should also at the same time let them know that that might not be your salary for your first job, but within a couple of years, certainly you're well within the range of being able to get those 6-digit salaries.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, really, that's just the entry or an early career beginning point, that 100K marker. But yeah, it may take you a couple of years to get there. I think the challenge is we just have what I call a talent bottleneck at the entry level, where there's so many people that have come through these degree programs and boot camps and certifications. And in a lot of cases, they do have IT experience. They have worked at a help desk, or they do have a home lab. They're quote unquote doing everything right, but there just seems to be a mismatch between the number of job seekers at that level and the number of open jobs. Any idea how we can help rectify that?
I think there's a few things going on there. While it is true, on the one hand, cybersecurity, it's not all IT technical. Everybody views it as an IT problem, but it's actually a business enterprise risk. So what I'm looking for is somebody who's more well-rounded. And what I see in the programs, you've seen this as well, right? They are training like pen testers or specific fields, very technical, or SOC analysts. And that's fine. But are they teaching them the right skills to be successful in the job? Things that are current. And it depends. Some programs do, some programs do not. And when these folks are getting out into the workforce and applying on these jobs, what are we finding right now? I can tell you from personal experience, hiring this year, we will post a entry-level position and we will get a significant number of applicants that have experience. And that could be for a number of different reasons. One, that there is a shortage out there, but now you've got people that have no experience competing against those who do. And what's the employer to do in this case? All they can do is hire the most qualified applicant. And so across these positions, it's true. I hired folks that had less experience, but I hired some that had more experience as well. So I think that we really need to look at these programs and make sure that we are preparing them to be security professionals for the future and give them a more well-rounded view of security that is beyond how to provision a firewall, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people too, they see these couple of entry points to the field and they assume that's kind of all there is, or that's the most optimal path for them to get into security. But I think about other areas like you had mentioned that are maybe less technical, security awareness training or GRC, or you could certainly make the argument that we need more technical GRC folks, but that's another discussion, or insider threat or fraud, all of these areas that are at least adjacent or in some part related to information security, broader scope than cyber,
Get your foot in the door is what I would recommend. I can tell you at my last organization, the entry-level positions were typically coming in as a cybersecurity analyst into the SOC, or as you mentioned, into security awareness. And getting your foot in the door is critical. And then you can move on to these. But instead, what do we usually see? A person comes out, no experience, and what do they want to be? Red team pen tester. Folks, that digital forensics, incident response, they're not entry-level positions. I hate to break it to you, but you're likely to have to do something else and then progress your career in that direction. So if you were going to go and work at an organization, I won't name any here right now, but say they have a robust security team, then you may have to come into one of these entry-level positions. And then as soon as you do, I would contact the manager who is responsible for the team that you want to be in and say, hey, I'm really interested in joining your team. What are the qualifications, or what can I do to up my skills and be a good candidate when there's an opening in your team, assuming I've got more experience. But I run into this all the time. In the last 2 weeks, I've had somebody that wants their first job in security to be pen testing, red teaming. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And I think it's incumbent upon experienced security folks like yourself to help adjust expectations with a lot of these people that have been, essentially promised the moon, and they're excited about a very, very narrow part of security when there's so much else out there, and it's such a broad and a deep field. So the way I see it, we have this matching problem where, there's the candidate side and then there's the hiring manager side. And there's a mismatch in skill sets between what the hiring managers want or what the business needs and the skill sets that the candidates have. So, we have all these people at the entry level, not enough entry level jobs. I know you have, you said your 5-step plan for breaking into security. So I'd be interested to hear that. And then also if there's any solution from the hiring manager side, like how can we justify building more of these entry level roles, or, building some sort of training program where we can create a pipeline, not just to hire one seat today, but like actually for the future, the next 6, 12 months, even 5, 10 years to bring more people through. So I know that's kind of two big pieces.
No, it's several. You've inspired me on a number of different items. So one, I do agree that we need to look at some of these programs, and I believe in putting my time where my mouth is. So you'll always find me in this role of educator, wanting to help people out. And it is true, I'm a little bit softer when I talk to the individuals, and I'm not quite as harsh on this, guiding them in the right direction for their career. But trying to find the right and build the right programs. I would love to offer a massive online course on cybersecurity. And I did teach in the past at university. And it was interesting because students that had been in a cybersecurity program came to my course and said, what's this? I said, this is security. They're like, but we didn't cover any of this before. I didn't need to answer that any further. I'm like, this is what you need on the job. I'm giving it to you as an expert, as my gift to you. Now, another thing I want to address, though, is now you've got a graduate of one of these programs. On average, do you think that communication is the strong point here? Are they able to articulate their skills and qualifications to hiring teams? I'm going to draw some attention to that problem there. It's in some of these programs, they are more qualified to, as I say, configure your firewall than speak in business terms and be, well, it's not the time to be modest, right? When you're applying for a job, you don't exaggerate your credentials, but you can't be modest either on your resume. And then on the receiving end of this, the hiring manager, if it's a large security team, that's one thing. They either will have the smarts to know whether a candidate is qualified or not, or they'll have somebody there from their team. But what if you're joining a place that has a 1 or 2 person security team? Well, then the hiring manager may not know. And what are they going to look for? They're going to look for the degree, and they're going to look for the certifications, right? And they may not understand the rest. Now, as for my 5-step plan, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but there's definitely some interesting nuggets in here. The first one I recommend is learn to speak the language. And you can do that for free. You can go on to LinkedIn Learning. If you have a library card, you can access the content. There's some great CISSP and SSCP courses. Again, I won't mention the actual names, but trust me, there's lots of information out there so that you can have a conversation with somebody on this topic. The second one is network. Go out there, and I will name some names now just in the effort to help people out. Go to your local ISC Squared chapter, your CSA, your ISSA, or ISACA groups, especially as a newbie or a student. It's usually cheap or free, and there's lots of volunteer opportunities, and you can network, and you go in there and you say, I'm really interested in getting into career in cybersecurity, and you watch out. No other industry that I'm aware of will help you get a leg up as much as this group will.
Yeah, and B-Sides.
Yeah, B-Sides is an excellent one as well, but show me another career or another industry. I don't believe that nurses hang out in a bar after hours trying to help new people, aspiring nurses, learn what they need to do. No. And in this case, they will. It really is fantastic. You'll never find people that are more willing. The third one I say, and I use my words carefully, is consider a certification. I'm not saying you have to get one, but you should at least consider it because it'll help differentiate you, right? So if anybody doesn't know this by now, if you have two applicants and they're the same, but one has the cert and the other one doesn't, that might be the tiebreaker. But I'm delivering cold hard truth here. I'm going to make some enemies right now. I will argue that the only certifications that anybody ever cares about are the CISSP, CISM, and CISA. And at least of those, the CISSP is not an entry-level cert. Do not go and do self-study and then go tackle the CISSP unless you're one of the less than 1% of people that are going to be able to pull this off. Instead, I recommend, because you probably haven't written tests or cert exams for a while, warm up with something that is a little bit easier, like CompTIA one, but it's not because you're going to dazzle them with your CompTIA Security Plus. It's really as practice writing these exams so you can go and take CISSP. Now, there is an exception to this. And the exception is if you are pursuing those pen testing, red teaming type ones, then that's when you're looking for a CEH or OSCP or GPEN or LPT, right? That's when those other certs are required. But there's so many certs out there and people can't decide what should I do, and they're falling for this. No, I've got to pay the local college $20,000 for this program that's going to kick me out in 6 months, and then I'm going to get a job and I'm going to be rolling in cash. As you said, manage the expectations. The fourth thing I recommend that terrifies these aspiring security professionals is to get on a stage. I encourage them. At that point, they're not the cybersecurity experts, so that terrifies them that they're going to be talking about cybersecurity. But there's probably something that they do know a lot about, so they can marry the topics together, cybersecurity with maybe it's data science or AI or something that they do know about, right? And then the fifth step is hang out your shingle as a cybersecurity professional. It's an unregulated industry. If you know the topics, if you have the certs, if you're published or if you've been on stage and you genuinely have an open mind, interest in learning more, nobody's going to question it, right? You may not have the experience on the job, but that's where now you're going to have to get creative, right? So maybe you enter the company in an IT position and apply internally somewhere else, or job shadowing or internship, some way of getting that experience.
Yeah, I think for me, the key is experience. However you manage to get that, it could be volunteering. It could be, shadowing somebody in your security department if you're working some other sort of corporate job. And just getting to know them and their processes and stuff like that.
Don't undersell yourself, right? I've used these examples with people. If the only experience you've had is in retail, did you accept unauthorized payments? No, right? Did you let random strangers go into the back room? No, you didn't. You were always paying attention to the anti-theft, and there are security portions of these jobs. So don't undersell.
Yeah, it's so interesting you mentioned payments specifically. Buddy of mine that he came through actually the campus recruiting program, but he was on his second career when I was at Align. He ended up becoming a QSA very quickly back when it was a lot easier to do and people were fudging the numbers. But he had been a retail manager for a retail store, and he managed to put on his resume, followed PCI compliance requirements and assess point of sale systems and stuff like that. So you can get pretty creative with, the terminology that you use in your resume and when you talk to folks. And, to your point.
I'm not saying that anybody should mislead. I'm just saying, tailor your resume for the job you're applying for. And I forgot I was going to do a bit of a plug for certification out there, because ISC Squared offers their certified in cybersecurity still right now for free. The program, you can go through all the on-demand training. You can just go over to their website and get that certification for free or very cheap. Maybe it's the cert exam attempt that costs you a little bit, but I believe that's included, and it's just $50 to join ISC after that. So don't waste the free opportunities, because imagine you get into one of these courses on LinkedIn Learning and you find out that this is not for me. Great. Good that you figured that out on your library card rather than enrollment 6 months into a program.
Yeah. Well, and there's just so much information online and so many communities that folks can speak the language with other existing practitioners in the field, Discord channels and subreddits. I always refer people to Access Cyber. I believe it's .co now. But they have a community tab on that website that lists a bunch of subreddits dedicated to security and Discord channels. All of these places where experienced security people hang out. And half the battle in securing that, well, there's a few major components, I think, to securing that first security role. One, you got to know people and they got to know you. And to your point about kind of getting on stage, I think LinkedIn is a great way to do that, to showcase what you're learning.
Stage works too, right? Yeah, your brand. It's all about your brand.
Yeah, and then, network with folks on these communities, and in doing so, you develop relationships that you never know what can turn into a warm referral for you. You can ask for a mentor. A lot of these Discord channels have mentor-mentee sections where you can find a manager or a CISO that's willing to take you under their wing. Yeah.
There's a lot of mentoring Mondays out there as well by some very accomplished professionals. But what do you see? They're giving back, right? So Tanya Janka is one that's on Twitter or X now that always is doing the mentoring Mondays. One of the things we didn't touch on earlier, just on the hiring side, though, it used to be more of a thing. I hope it's not now, but these junior entry-level positions where they ask for a CISSP and 15 years of experience. I hope we have closed the door on that, but I bet you they still exist out there. I definitely had some chuckles when people on LinkedIn, as you mentioned, like Naomi Buckwalter, post these ones that are absolutely ridiculous. But even she changed her approach, and I thought that was very clever. She started recognizing the people who were doing it well. See, that's how we get better, right? Not just the name and shame, but say, wow, I'll just use an example. Cisco, really good job on posting a very approachable, realistic entry-level position for security. But as I mentioned before, if you have dozens of seasoned security experts applying on that job because either they think they can negotiate the title or the salary, or perhaps just because they've been out of work and due to the current environment, they just need a job, they're likely to be hired over the junior, the entry, the university grad.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know that we can square that circle. I mean, that's kind of, to me, it seems like an impossible problem, just supply and demand right now with so many people on the market that, like you said, have been out of work, but do have good credentials and skills. Where's the business case then for that hiring team to make the decision to hire somebody entry level if they can get somebody experienced for the same price? Like, do you think there's ever a case to be made there, or do we have to focus more on the specific initiatives, I guess, to build training programs at a larger scale versus the one-offs where right now it's just kind of fill the hole with somebody experienced because you can?
I do like the idea, though, of pipelines, like true entry-level positions, incubating, knowing where your talent supply, your pool is going to come from, and putting them up through the ranks. I would like to believe that the experienced folks can find experienced positions. See, that's what I'm holding out for. I want to believe that a person who is interested in getting this employment will be successful eventually, but I got to admit, it's harder now. If I look back over the years for the layoffs, they weren't affecting cyber, right? Lots of us were looking at it like, yes, all these other things are being affected, but not cybersecurity, and that has changed. I don't need to go and verify my data. I've seen that, and that's unsettling. What do I think is going to happen? I think that out of necessity, we're going to start populating or building out these security teams, because it's not just self-serving. I'm looking out there right now, and I talked on a meeting earlier today and forecasted, folks, cyber attacks aren't decreasing. This problem is only going to get worse. We're going to need people. Actually, let's confront that one right now. There are organizations that are laying off people, including cyber folks, because they believe that artificial intelligence is going to make them unnecessary. And I'm just going to go
less
on
necessary
record right now that says, while AI may be able to assist you with some of the tasks that humans don't need to have eyes on, if you have a security operations center, it's people, process, and technology. People. You've still got to have the people making sure things are going smoothly. So it's not going to eliminate the positions. It may enable them to focus on higher value add work. But I would say that it's short-sighted if folks are believing that AI is going to make this problem go away. And in fact, on that note, the attackers are using AI. If the good guys aren't, then they're going to lose, right? So, but it has to be very intentional and deliberate and under the leadership of qualified people.
Yeah, I think the challenge right now, and this is where the AI comes into the discussion, is purely for cost-cutting measures. Hiring managers are being told, okay, figure out a way to solve this problem without incurring so much additional cost or without needing to open up one or two new positions. We'd rather you just solve that more cheaply without having to hire anybody. Is there any way around that? If that's what, the executive leadership team is saying for a given company, like, can you make the case that no, we do need people, that an AI can't be as good as, say, a junior SOC analyst for what we need it to do?
I'd say within reason. If you already have a bloated team, I know so many people are complaining about this. God, I've just got too many people in my... No, they aren't, right? But if you already had a sizable team and you're looking for some efficiencies, perhaps. But I'd say that more organizations are sitting there with two security folks run for a 30,000 person organization and expecting them to cover 24/7. AI is not going to solve that problem for you because you don't have enough folks. You should either invest in that yourself or outsource it. I'm not gonna fault you if you say we want to focus on our core business, so we're going to need this other organization to focus on IT or security. If that's not our thing, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, actually, that's one of the solutions here, right? If you as an organization can't keep bringing in the qualified talent to fill these positions, then make that your outsourced provider's problem, because they, if they're focused on this, should have that talent pool and ability to absorb it such that when one person leaves, it doesn't mean that now you've got 50% of the capacity that you had before. So I think that's probably it starts to build the case for some consolidation, not having to maintain this in your own team, because I know that historically trying to maintain a SIM expert within your team, best of luck on that. Because even the organizations that's their core business, they couldn't at the time because they were charging out the rate that they were charging out per day is so high in demand, right? So, and once somebody gets the experience, that's exactly what used to happen, is they'd apply somewhere else. And the cycle continues. But I think this is a very interesting problem to look at, right? So I am contributing to the problem here. I'm telling people, by as many as I can reach, get into cybersecurity and data science and AI now, but get into cybersecurity and there's going to be a job for you. And you're bringing attention to this problem where you talk about it being a bottleneck, where we appear to have all of these aspiring cyber professionals unable to land the jobs. So the real question is, do the jobs exist? Should the jobs exist? Will the jobs exist? And are these people qualified to fill them? And I'm definitely down for exploring that more and trying to contribute in a positive way, because I certainly have my thoughts about what should be covered in these programs. And I get it. They can't make a 4-year degree into a micro-credential, right, and cover everything the same way. But if you aren't talking about risk and security awareness in your cybersecurity program, then you're probably missing some very important topics. Because,
yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to take this opportunity also to try to deal with another misconception or myth. People think that all cyber security positions are all IT technical, or they're all firefighting, woken up in the middle of the night, 24/7 on call, and they aren't. Sure, that's true. You'll find that in security operations, but there's so many other positions out there. There's something for everybody in cybersecurity, up to and including the sales team, right? Or if you imagine and this is one that's key, goes back to your original questions, cybersecurity awareness. Who's the most qualified person for that? What would the educational background, I kind of just gave it away there, look like for a security awareness manager or members of the team? Well, a teacher, right? An educator. You want to explain complex topics to somebody simply so that they understand them and can follow them? God, I wouldn't be going to your local IT nerd to do that. They're going to say that you need DLP in your DMZ for PCI, and people are going to be like, nobody even talks like that. That's not even English. See, we know we're not supposed to use the acronyms, right? But we still put militarized language, and the jargon still comes up. Like when I talk about fluently how we've got threat actors exploiting vulnerabilities, normal people don't talk like that, right? So there's definitely a few aspects here, and I think communication is one of them. We got to make sure that the grads that are coming out can speak confidently to their abilities, their qualifications, and demonstrate clearly how they can meet the requirements of the job postings.
Well, yeah, and be a value add versus a value detriment or drain, on the existing team. I think that's a lot of where the pushback from, hiring the entry level folks comes from. It's, well, we don't have the existing time, or we don't have any spare time or resources to devote to this person, and they're going to be, essentially we'd have to do this as a philanthropic endeavor versus as something that's going to help our team. Or it's more of a short-term focus where, we're reactively hiring this person, not thinking 6 or 12 months down the road, they're going to be a value add to our team. How can we get hiring managers to think more long-term when they have, a fire to put out, essentially, in a lot of cases?
So this is difficult. What we know, I definitely know from working in security, is people will not do anything that they don't have to. Right? They won't do it consistently. They won't do it well. They won't keep doing it unless they absolutely have to. And that's why we have such a problem in cybersecurity. There is no wide sweeping law across the country that says you must have these things, even the basics. So we would love to have folks be more altruistic, and you will see pockets of them. And it's because of what I said before. There's no industry that will help people get a leg up. Anybody who is passionate, like me, in this particular field and developing the next generation of talent wants to do this. And there are so many of them out there. But if they are given one vacancy, one headcount, one position to fill, what are they going to do? They're going to take a chance on the prodigy, the person that they think is well suited but has no experience, or the seasoned veteran. And that's impossible at that point. So I think what I would like to see is maybe some more creative approaches to this. God knows I was trying to do this in my previous job, which was staff a security operations center, like a provincial or statewide SOC, with grads from university and rotate them through, but not on their own. Have it under the supervision of qualified experts. So now they're getting that. And so this is a win-win scenario, right? If you think about it, the citizens, residents, they're better protected because they've got a small army of people that are working to protect them. I'm picking on the SOC in this particular case, but you could do the same thing for the GRC or risk areas. Those folks are getting the experience, and the employer, of course, is getting way better coverage and contributing to the industry positively by turning out people that have the experience to match their programs, right? That's just one way, but I think I don't think that this is a simple problem to solve. I don't think there's going to be a single solution to it, but I do think we need to be looking at those programs and the syllabus and what is being taught, and make very clear to people that are signing up for them that I'm trying to use an example from another industry. If you went to school to do oil changes, that isn't going to make you the car salesman of the year, right? And that's what I'm seeing here. It's very focused. It's like cybersecurity, yes, and we're going to talk about IP addresses and subnetting and CIDR and everything like that. But that's just one little part of it, right? So I think I would like to see and I know they exist, and they exist. You can get a 4-year degree in cybersecurity in the U.S. Last time I checked, you could still not get a 4-year degree in Canada. So I think Canada needs to step it up and maybe partner with a U.S. organization in order to be able to offer that. I know that there are many master's programs. There's the diplomas, the certifications, there's micro-credentials, but it seems conspicuously absent. So what I'm drawing attention to is, if you think this problem is hard in the United States, where somebody can go in and get a 4-year degree, a bachelor's in cybersecurity, and then apply on a security job, and the employer says, well, it's pretty obvious. They're applying on a security position. They've got a security degree. I know what's going on here. But imagine in Canada, what are you looking for as a hiring manager? You know what most of them look for? A degree in computer science or some kind of engineering. I think that's a problem, right? So I think this area is too fragmented. There's too many different ideas on what a comprehensive security education is, and as we both know, you can only accomplish so much in the classrooms before you have to apply that experience, and that's what's going to galvanize it in, and you're going to fully have an understanding of what it takes to be a cybersecurity professional.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like hands-on is everything, at least to the hiring managers that I talked to. And to your point from earlier about outsourcing, I think that's part of the solution here. Is it does seem like there's kind of a trend, at least in the US, where companies, in an effort to cut costs, are outsourcing a lot of their security. That these MSSPs benefit from economies of scale because they already have this big team to analyze alerts or do whatever, and they can do even more with AI. So, they're able to service multiple clients, possibly in the same industry, and be very, very efficient at it. And they have the profit motive to train people because they know that their analysts are going to be revenue generating for the company at some point.
It's absolutely true. If you are an organization and your core business is not security, then you better know the reason why you're investing and building this capability within your organization. Does it offer you a competitive advantage, right? Are you able to offer and say that you're an HR staffing firm, that you offer secure staffing? I don't know, but you better know the reason, because the reason is usually not grounded in anything logical. It's usually because somebody has a fascination with it, or there's a person that, they're qualified. So they're like, I'm going to build out this whole team. But the straight goods are, if that's not your core business, then you should be strongly considering, let's go with an MSSP to do that for you. And I don't want to be biased because we offer these services. I'm just saying that then that frees you up to focus on delivering your services to your clients and leaving this to somebody else who does it well. And as you say, is incented to keep being able to do it and have those economies of scale. It feels like a bit of a no-brainer in that case, but we still see it, those organizations. And then it turns out that they're not continuing to invest in them. And if your skills aren't current in security, that's a false sense of security.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it all kind of goes back to the idea of being a cost center for internal security teams. And that's why in an economy or environment like we are in today, it's so difficult for internal security teams to justify adding more budget or headcount when the company is just trying to keep costs as low as possible at all costs. No pun intended. But, MSSPs may be part of the solution of that problem. Another solution may be somehow tying security, like you said, to some sort of desirable business outcome. So I've been telling job seekers in this environment, like, do one of two things: tie yourself to revenue somehow, where you enabled or generated revenue for your company as a security person, or showed that you cut costs in some sort of way. Can you think of any, I guess, examples?
There's at least another one, which is, it's very similar to yours. I just want to call it a separate one because I know that this has worked in the past. Security should always be looking to tie themselves to a larger initiative within the organization, one that is too big to fail, like the latest CRM rollout or similar, right? You got, as we all know, you've got to build security in from the ground, from the beginning, the ground up. Because it's going to be cheaper, it's not going to be the delays, and it's going to be more effective. Instead, security was always an afterthought. You bolt it on after the fact, and then it does cause delays, and it's more expensive, and it's not as good. So that's one of them. But I like that approach, going in and really thinking about what does the business actually want, and often it's things like uptime, availability. They don't want to be in the headlines. And when you were talking about the costs, in my head, I'm thinking about, well, last time I checked, IBM cost of a breach, $4.88 million US, average cost of a breach in the US. I don't want to be fire and brimstone, but realize when you get breached, the impacts are not just financial. That can be recovered. But the brand and reputational damage and being in the paper, I don't think that's the kind of publicity you want, because it goes right to the core. Can I trust this organization with my data? So in that way, it is a bit of a differentiator, but it doesn't mean that you have to maintain that team internally. If you were to run a security organization, like a security team internally to cover operations, and you wanted 24/7, your cost starts at $1 million and goes up from there. And that would be on the super cheap if you're going to do it yourself, because just the bodies alone to maintain a 24/7 schedule, whether it's bodies and seats or call out after hours, which can be more effective, but then there's a delay in jumping on those incidents. It's a challenging problem. And that's why I appreciate I sought you out, because you're bringing attention to this. We've got a dire need in this country, right, for cybersecurity, making sure that systems and data are safe. In order to make that work, AI or not, you've got to have the people, and they've got to be qualified. They've got to be experienced. So how can we keep that going, and not have the average age of a security professional go from, I don't have data around this, but say it was 35 10 years ago, and then the average is 45 now. Not to say that we can't, skill like veterans or others that want to change careers. I'm saying come one, come all to cybersecurity. But then Pete's here with the warning sign and the hand up that says, but watch out, we've got this bottleneck and we don't know how to get past this right now, because either hiring employers, they don't know what they want, or they can't get connected with the right people to help them. I think it's a multifaceted problem, and I wouldn't want to try to propose a simple solution to a complex problem.
Yeah, well, and then too, you have the issues of communication between the HR and recruiting teams and the hiring manager. And I think in a lot of cases, to your point from earlier, that's how we get these job descriptions that have the CISSP for the entry-level role. It's because HR scoured the web for some other similar job descriptions. So it's like a self-replicating problem.
Tell me what the person should have. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that could be too. Yeah, so, in especially in larger organizations, you can't necessarily expect HR or the recruiting team to be security recruiting experts or understand all the terminology or acronyms.
Why would we expect that? That would be crazy. Yeah. I don't know what they normally do for other positions. Like if they're hiring a doctor, do they have a doctor there, or are they a doctor when they're interviewing them? But in this particular case, if I would say the average organization probably has one or less full-time security people. So if that person leaves, then who is doing this interviewing? They probably reach out to the IT manager or IT analyst. And again, I don't want to be ever confused for saying that security is an IT problem, because no, that IT person may hire a good IT person, but may totally miss it on security. So I think through this conversation, I think you have at least convinced me again, that there's a role for these MSSPs, and then that can be a good place for the graduates to get more experience, assuming that they're coming out of a program that warrants it. But I do think, again, we've got a real problem here. I suspected for a while that it was just people that they just weren't presenting themselves correctly. They had terrible interview skills or a bad resume. But now I am coming full circle. And now I do believe that there is a problem because there are security. In fact, for a time there, and I believe it to be true, in my presentations, I would lead with 0%. And on my slide, it was meant to reflect the amount of unemployment in the province for cybersecurity professionals. And I believe that I had enough visibility into the organizations that we knew when there's one or two people that were free agents and they would get snapped up. Pete, I'll ask you, do you think that there are qualified security professionals in the country looking for work?
There are a few.
A few, yeah. Now, how do we quantify this? Like, what's the order of magnitude? If you told me that it was 10,000, I wouldn't blink an eye. I would believe that to be true.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't either. I mean, as they say, the plural of anecdotes, and I have a lot of anecdotes, is data. So I talk to so many people that are job seekers that, obviously they're, in a lot of cases, their presentation skills are amazing. They're very well spoken. They have a list of accomplishments a mile long. And a lot of where they're getting caught up is just that first screening call by the recruiter. They can't get to that point because there's just so much noise in the market. And that's another issue we could, go on a tangent about. Yep, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on time. So just one last question for you, Gary. Is there anything that we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
I think I don't want to use the buzzword, but I think that like for a future topic or more exploration is probably the effect of AI. And now I'm not talking about in use by attackers or by the blue teams, but in that actual hiring practice. I think what you're seeing is, and I think it's a great place to leave with so people can contemplate this, is basically AI systems filtering and looking through AI generated resumes. Is there really any point here now? Is there any value in this system when you've got AI looking at AI to try to figure out who the most qualified candidate is? So I think all things AI is, and the effect on the talent gap within cybersecurity, I think is worth looking at further.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've talked about this before. I think ironically, the more automation, the more AI, the more systems, the more IT that is involved in the hiring process, the more important the people and process aspects of hiring become. And the more that we need to have more human connection and try and find some way to decrease the amount of noise that we're seeing out there. So it's a great point and a great place to end. So thanks for your time, Gary. And if people want to reach out to you, find you online, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a fantastic way of doing that. And I'm always passionate about helping people get into cybersecurity, as you've seen here. And I can give you some tips. And who knows, maybe if I like you, I'll be willing to take a look at your resume and make some suggestions. But thank you so much for having me here. It is one of the two fastest ways to get my attention. Threats to critical infrastructure. And the second one is developing the next generation of cybersecurity talent. So I put my time where my mouth is.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for your time, Gary. Thanks, everybody. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.